medicine, vultures are dead because they have a severe fatal allergic reaction to this medicine, which I will repeat is called diclofenac. So what happened when the vultures died? The vultures died. Vultures are known as nature's sanitation engineers. We have a sanitation crisis in Sindh, and now, in the late 2000s, in 2020, 30 years after this drought happened, we have outbreaks of rabies. We have 20,000 to 60,000 people dying in Sindh every year because of rabies. Vultures don't get rabies. Vultures were the engineers that were cleaning out the carcasses of animals that had rabies. So what you have as a result of something that started as a reaction to a drought, you have an outbreak of rabies. Because you don't have any natural system left for cleaning out rabid animals and rabies carriers, and you have a proliferation of dogs and rats which carry rabies. Again, this is something that started in the 90s. It's showing up in a very different manifestation now. I can give you so many more examples. In the drought in the late 90s, there are areas in Sindh where pani hota tha, women used to work in the fields. The water is gone, the lands were lying fallow. Landowners said, okay, well, there's no water, what do? We need to use the land for something. You can't use it for vegetation. So they set up brick kilns. You see a profusion of brick kilns across certain parts of Sindh. Well, these laborers didn't know how to make brick kilns, so they brought in labor from South Punjab who knew how to make brick kilns, which is fine. Except the women who were working in the fields suddenly say there are South Punjab laborers, and the women left the fields and went into Parda. Because suddenly the areas that they were familiar with were surrounded by people who they were not comfortable with. So again, my point is water, there was an acute water distress, and that led to land tenure utilization systems changing, and it led to immigrant labor coming in, and it led to women, taking to the veil or secluding themselves. So again, my point is these are long-term trajectories. You can't really go out into a drought or into a flood. And there are, of course, immediate circumstances, and we see that. Bandh phoot gaye, pani aa gaya, death and destruction. But then there are longer-term implications that take a lot longer to kind of play out, and sometimes we can't even tie it back to the original cause. The floods last year in 2022, in the Kache ka ilaka, I had people telling me, well, we knew this would happen because the mountains are thinning. Now, again, this is something that I haven't read in the media, I haven't read research papers about, but I have people who are telling me the mountains are becoming thinner. Is this because of a different pattern of wind erosion? Is this happening because wind direction is changing? But it's actually logical. So if you think, if a mountain is kind of, this is the gradient, and it suddenly becomes this, or not suddenly, over a period of time becomes this, it changes the water velocity. Right? So if the water is coming down this gradient, it's going to be slower, but when it comes down a sharp gradient, it's going to be the velocity will be much more, which is what happened in the Kache ka ilaka, which is why it broke through all the bunds, it broke through systems, very localized kind of water management systems that have been around since, the times of the British Empire. Everything broke down. But are we reflecting this? Do we know why why these mountains were thinning? We don't know. I had locals who were telling me, chuntiya pedon pe chad gayi. So ants that kind of work at ground level were suddenly climbing the trees and they left the ground. Makes sense. If they knew the flood was coming, they would go up. But is that being reflected anywhere? Do we understand the science of it? I don't know. They did tell me the mango trees flowered like they've never flowered before. And that for them was a sign of alarm. What is the science behind that? I don't know. But something within that system, within that kind of ecologically precarious system was warning them that this was happening. We just can't back it up. I can't back it up. Maybe there are people who kind of are more inclined towards kind of an understanding of the agricultural system. I don't have it. But my point really is that we need to look at what is happening to the people who are most impacted, but also the people who are the most vulnerable. Which, okay, in this country, in the US, they have this phrase called canaries in the coal mine. Right? So when they had coal mines, they would take these little small birds into the coal mines, And they knew that when a mine is about to collapse or when the oxygen has depleted inside the mine, the bird will die. So they used to just keep the bird there, and the minute the bird started squawking or dying, everybody would else would rush out because they knew that the bird will die of oxygen, lack of oxygen before people will. So it was kind of an early warning system. And I'm actually suggesting that that's something we should consider, that the most weakest and most vulnerable people actually work as